Okay, guys, what's up? We're just gonna go over InDesign and some of the advantages of it, what it's for, how to use it for our poster, how to use it for future posters, and so on. What you're looking at right now is the template and example for your poster that you're going to make. This is what the InDesign interface looks like. Um, it's a lot of guidelines and such. Um, but basically, the purpose of InDesign is not really to make graphics or anything or art, but it's actually more to just lay out work you've already done on a board. It's an easier way to start making presentation boards or presentation files. For example, you can make a poster, or like this is a good example. This is a magazine that I'm in charge of publishing, so I can make entire magazines on here. A lot of people actually use this for publication of books, portfolios especially, and so on. So going back to your boards, and we can make the dimensions whatever we want and the layout whatever we want. It's pretty helpful. Um, and so you can use this to even like make your exhibition posters for this class, for studio, and such. To install it, it's through Adobe. I recommend you guys get Adobe Creative Cloud, which gets you everything. But if I just literally type in, I just typed in download InDesign, and then if I click on Adobe, it takes me to this. This is what InDesign looks like. I can go to the free trial, and I can get Creative Cloud free trial, or I can get InDesign. This gets you all of these. This is what I have. I have InDesign, Photoshop, Illustrator, Lightroom, all of that. But you can just download InDesign free trial if you want. But I highly recommend getting all this stuff. You get students. See, there's a student discount right here. Students get it way cheaper than everyone else. So super good to take advantage of it, because I promise you're going to want to know most of these programs. Anyway, so that's how you would download the free trial. And so, yeah, here's the interface of InDesign. You can see my page, and then this pinkish purplish line around is my margin that I set up. Just helps act as a guideline. And so we can make a fake one basically. So if I go to File, New, I'm going to go to, I'm going to go to Document. And there's a whole bunch of options basically, but I can make my own. I can go to inches, and then this says basically a piece of, this is like letter size, 8.5 by 11, but I can make that whatever I want. I can make a landscape, whatever. And then there's stuff like this where it says columns and gutter. That's just going to divide my page into however many vertical sections I want. And then margins is where it's important. Margins is what this line is around the paper. It's pretty common to have, like, a common margin is 2.5, so a 1/4 inch around. That's what this one is. And yeah, it's unless you're going full bleed, which means you're going to bring the picture all the way to the edge of the poster, which is only good in some scenarios. It's very good to usually leave some breathing room. Visually, in architecture and pretty much any graphic design, it's good to have some breathing room. It may look like wasted space, but visually it will read much better. The bleed and the slug don't really matter unless you're actually going to like be printing like physically. So I guess it matters for your poster, but a bleed is just gonna add. So if I did a bleed of 1.25, and it could just be really small, it's gonna change it all at the same time. And then I preview this. I can click the little preview. So this is the preview of the file I'm making. There's my page, the inside margin, and then the bleed is this red on the outside. and you bring your pictures all the way to that line, so that way when it's printing, it is for sure going to print all the way to the edge, and there's not going to be some sort of condition. It's not going to just leave a white space around. That happens a lot when printing. So it's just ensuring that your image is going to go all the way to the edge there. So in fact, we can just hit create, and here's just like a page I can put stuff on, and I can show you how putting images in here works. So say I want to put a new image on here. I know my desktop is awful. Let's put an image, this nice picture right here. So that's how I do it, is I go find the picture, and I'm going to drag it, and my mouse looks like this. If I then click on the top, I can just draw this in place. Okay. Now with InDesign, the image system works pretty weird. You have like basically 2 frames. So if I just click on the image, you can see I have a border around it that I can change. But that's basically changing my picture frame size, but not really like the actual size of the image. So when I adjusted that, it's shortening the image. It's basically cropping the image. This is basically a cropper. But then if I actually want to change the size of the image, I can double click, and it gives me a orange frame that I can then change the size of. This definitely takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you kind of get it figured out, you realize that the fact that it's split up into 2 frames like that becomes really easy in laying things out. I can crop things pretty easy where I don't want it to show if I have text, or if I just need more room on my poster. Say I need writing down here, or I want a writing on the side or something. I can just scoot this over. Same to over here. Okay. And so also another thing you're going to notice immediately about InDesign is this looks really, really bad. But what's great about InDesign that is very unique to InDesign is when you're laying everything out, all your pictures, everything, it's going to put it in a really bad quality purposely, so your computer can run faster, so it doesn't have to process all these heavy images. So it's purposely looking bad. But if I preview this is what I do all the time. If I want to preview, I go to View, Screen Mode, Presentation, and it's going to take a second. So when I preview this, it's actually perfect quality. It's very, very good. And so when I go back to normal, it's going to show it bad. Oh, another way, instead of having to go all the way to presentation mode, I can go to View, and there's a thing called Overprint Preview. This is basically showing you what the print would look like. It's going to put it in higher quality for me, so I can understand what it's going to look like. But you can tell it runs slower once I do that, especially when you have a lot. If I turn it off, it puts it on bad quality, and then it's way faster. Okay, so that's really helpful in understanding how the images work. Now let's go back to our board, and we can talk about some of the things that might be helpful to learn just specifically for this board. So if you get this template here, likely when you open up this template, it's going to be it's going to have question marks or exclamation marks near these images, because you probably don't have the images, but that's okay. You're just going to be replacing them with your own, and it's very easy to replace. with your own image. Because I've already put the frames here, say I want a new picture to replace this, say this is my new perspective I want to put in is this one right here. All I literally have to do is drag it over and put it in place, and it's just going to fill those spots for me. So it's super easy in that regard. If I Control Z those. This top picture is supposed to be a picture of a picture referencing your site, and the reason why it's so gray like this is if I click on it, you can see right here is my opacity, and I lowered it to 35. It would look like this when I put it in, but we want this to be more in the background because we really want your perspectives to stand out. So I lowered the opacity to about 40 to 35. That way it's a little bit faded. Opacity, yeah, you should be familiar with opacity because of Photoshop, but that's what I did, is I lowered the opacity on that. So you guys can, if you want, bring in an image and try and set up your boxes like this, but I highly recommend all you need to do is just, you don't even need to go to File, Insert, just find your image somewhere on your desktop or in your files, click and drag it over, and it's going to automatically put it in there. If I want to edit it at all, I can double click and move it around within that box. That way I don't have to redraw these boxes, make sure everything's lined up. It takes a while to really line these things up, make sure the spacing is even, everything is perfect. It does take a lot more time to do that, so I try to make it as easy as possible for you by just giving you the images or the frames already. Now, these are text and lines I've added myself. So these you're probably going to have to move around because yours is going to be obviously different than mine. So for text, sorry, I'll make this window bigger. So say I didn't have this text here. If I want to make text, pretty easy. It's just in your side here. It looks like a T. And I can just click and drag a text box. And obviously just type whatever I want. We can call this like thin curved roof. Sure. We want that to be the title of it. I can go up here, typically, like where my fonts are. You should have a huge list of fonts. These are my favorites, so I've put them up here. And then I have, for this font specifically, I have all these different different types of font I can use. But what's also really nice about InDesign is InDesign is meant for this stuff, so there's a lot of things I can do to manipulate my text. So say this is my text box, I can basically select everything. Obviously can increase the size, whatever. I can click on this and it will capitalize everything. I can click on this and it will capitalize everything but add emphasis to the front letters. Yeah, there's a lot of things I can do. I can underline, obviously. I can do this type of thing, this. Yeah, there's a lot I can do here. So that's one thing. I can increase even the spacing between these. This basically stretches out my word. Doesn't stretch the letters, it just puts more and more space between each of the elements. This is something I do a lot to fill space. It's called this VA right here. I can even increase the height of my letters, and that's actually stretching it, so I don't like that. It's weird to manipulate the text. And then I can even add my own italicized degree of text, so I have this at 25%. But I can bring this back to 0. And of course you have your text colors. I can make my text whatever I want, and then I can even have an outline of my text if I want. So there's a lot of things you can do with text here. And in this line, all I did was just go to this line tool, and then I clicked, and to make sure it was straight, I held shift. Shift will make things straight. And see how InDesign even like tells me when something's lined up with something else? Gives me these green arrows that show they're equal. That's very, very helpful. And so when I drew this line, it actually shows that nothing's there. If I go and look here, two things need to happen. I need to give it a color, I need to give it black, and I need to give it a thickness. It's 0 point right now. I'm gonna make it 1. So because I didn't hold shift when I made that, it was a little crooked. There we go, I did it again. And there it is. So that's just simple lines. I use lines all the time. But that's, yeah, so that's just text that I added. You can just double click in it and change it, no problem. So project name, you would double click, type whatever it is, double click here, type whatever it is. You don't have to have this here. I just put, you can maybe title what the building is, or the view, be like, oh, elevation or view from park, or park view, something like that. Here are some workflow diagrams. That's just where, same thing, you can just drop in your image, adjust it however you need by double clicking in it. If you want, I think it might even be beneficial. You have your steps listed here. You can even have some text here if you want, explaining what that step was. But this is the simplest right here. The most beautiful is just straightforward like this. And then here is your parametric design. Here's all the different grasshopper images that you would like. So, and like I said earlier, we can preview this. So if I go to view, screen mode, presentation, or I could do Shift W. It's going to give me a presentation like view of what this would look like. I can click the next arrow to show the next board. So they're pretty nicely laid out, pretty simple, nice, good breathing room, clear labels. Yeah. Like I said, you can do anything you want with this. You can get really complicated. I make my portfolio in this. This is very similar to what a portfolio layout would look like, but this is for a magazine, for rowing. It can make some pretty professional spreads like this. So this looks like a magazine. This is all just doing simple stuff I had just showed you guys. Yeah, so that's pretty much the power of InDesign. But a few last notes is when you're putting images in here, make sure you're picking like high quality resolution pics, because these are going to be printed. So always make sure your images are high quality. Never put anything that's bad quality. It just won't look good on yourself. Yeah, and just remember when you're looking at it that it's gonna look bad quality, but it's actually better than you think. You just have to see the overprint preview. Again, view, overprint view, preview. It's going to show you what that's going to look like. It's going to be higher quality. And then let me look here at my notes to see anything else that I should be covering. 1 second. Let me scoot back out of here. There we go. Okay. And then so some nitpicky things about the actual drawings themselves. This is something I made this exploded axon myself. These red lines are very helpful in explaining exploded axons. It's showing that I'm pulling this up. It's not the actual design. I'm pulling it up. This is where, if you dropped everything down, this is where it would go. It would land right here. It's easy to do it, really beneficial. And yeah, remember to increase the transparency on this by lowering the opacity. That's good. Make sure all your images are high resolution, probably about 20 by 20, with like 300 to 400 DPI or resolution, basically. And yeah, just make sure your render is of high quality. If it's really not good, have someone in your group put their best one in here or redo it. It should be really nice quality in terms of no pixels, nothing overly fake. This is very well done. This is by one of your students, not me. And so yeah, this looks really good. So yeah, just make sure everything looks good. You don't want to reflect poorly on yourself and your group. But that is really everything about InDesign. Definitely make your portfolio in here. It's very helpful, very easy. And that's what I did, and that's what almost everyone I know does, is makes their portfolio in here. So all right, hope that answers most of your questions. Happy Thanksgiving.